good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone. As always, we are so pleased to be with you here and now. So let us all come together into this moment now, remembering that now is the only time that is. Release all thoughts of the past, all future predictions, all thoughts that are distracting, and just center into the now. And breathe. So, centered into the now, we are here, and you are as well. So, as always, this is a conversation for awakening, which is going from the mindlessness to mindfulness. Remember that you have two parts to your mind. You have the part of your mind that is the ego, which is the wrong mind, and the part of your mind that is the Holy Spirit, which is your right mind. One is peace and one is conflict. The ego mind is the obvious conflict, you see, whereas Holy Spirit is peace and only peace. So you always have these two options, although they present themselves to you in many forms, you see. And so as you go about your day-to-day living, you really want to pay attention to which mind you are listening to, which mind you are working with, you see. Something we were saying to the channel this morning is the best thing to do is to start your day in this neutral space of peace in which you can quietly observe your mind and see which mind you have invited in. Does this make sense to everyone? And then choose to listen to the only mind that is for peace, which is your right mind. How can you tell if you're thinking with your right mind? You feel clarity, you feel at peace, you feel calm, you see. If you feel conflicted in any way, know that you have dipped into the ego mind, you see. But you can always change your mind, because being a mind, as we always have said, because you are not a body, but a mind, you have the ability to choose again, you see. You don't have to stay in a negative thought pattern at all. You don't have to stay in negative focus, you see. But you can change your mind, you see, by saying, I must have decided wrongly, but I can choose again, you see. I don't have to stay here. I can choose peace instead of conflict, you see. So it's so important to maintain, and we're going to say do your best to maintain, a mind of peace throughout your experience in this illusion, you see. That is a great contribution to this experience, you see. In fact, it's the contribution that you have. Does this make sense? So remember, your purpose is forgiveness. Your purpose is to accept atonement for yourself, which is forgiveness, you see. All minds are joined, and so you want to think lovingly. You want to think kindly. You want to think with God, who is love, rather than the ego thought process of blame and of conflict, you see. You are not responsible for what you see, meaning you are not responsible for the actions that your physical eyes might observe, but what you are responsible for is your reaction to what you perceive. Does this make sense? So it's important that you monitor your reactions. And that, again, goes back to, am I thinking with the Holy Spirit or with the ego? Remember that all reactions, the reactionary energy is the ego, you see, because that's conflict. Whereas if you notice, okay, there has been a disturbance in the mind, meaning I've let conflict get the better of me. And that was a decision of your mind. You see, that was something you chose. You can, in that moment, choose again. Does this make sense? So you want to go about your life in this way, where you become more aware rather than letting yourself wander off again, falling asleep into the mind of conflict. So we are here, and you are as well. And we are ready for conversations now.
Good morning. First question. I have no specific question, but maybe Jesus can talk about going through the intense ego attacks around death and destruction. I can hear its voice saying, "You're gonna die. You're gonna lose your mind forever if you go there." It's very intense and scary. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we want to point out that the thoughts of destruction and the thoughts of death are of the ego. Does this make sense? So of course the ego would tell you that you're going to die. And in fact, if you choose again and you leave the ego behind, it's the ego that disappears. You see, it doesn't want to disappear. It wants to keep itself active, you see. And the way that it keeps itself active is keeping you in conflict. You see, we'll point out all of the things going wrong in the world. We'll point out all of the things that you're doing wrong. And also fear. Fear is of the ego, you see. And that is of the body, you see. Fear is always around form. Does this make sense? It has nothing to do with who you really are. That's why we want to remind you that there is no fear in love, you see. Love simply is love, and there's nothing else. So, anything else?
That's it. Okay, next question. Dear beloved Jesus, I am being called to teach Reiki. I know it's just another tool to express love and to connect to our higher selves. Would you agree that divine guidance and healing happen when we surrender to what is without the intention to manifest anything specifically? The deeper I dive into spirit, the more I see there's no need for desires and intentions. I feel like life flows more effortlessly this way. Is this observation correct?
Absolutely. And that's why you feel that it flows so effortlessly in this way. You don't have any resistance to it. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So, and does this answer your question?
Waiting for a response.
So basically, when you are aligned with who you really are, you have no desires and you have no wants, you see, because you are everything. And you have everything, you see, because you were created as everything. And the everything we speak of is love, you see. Love only creates like itself. And so you, at your core, are love, you see, and nothing else. The rest is the illusion. Does this make sense? And so you are correct in thinking that to not have a desire for something to manifest is the way to go. That's right, you see. Because if you feel like you have to have something manifest, it means that you don't have it. Does this make sense? It's telling you this must manifest before you feel okay, or this must manifest before you are healed. And we have to laugh at that because you are healed when you realize that you have everything, you see, and that you are everything. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful. It's very important to really look to that within you, the peace of mind within you, you see, the love within you that is always present and always reachable. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Next question. I'm not sure I understand solipsism. This theory holds that I am the only conscious being in existence and that the cosmos sprang into existence when I became sentient and will disappear when I die. It says other minds and people are imaginary figures who aren't really there. There seems to be a similarity at face value here with what you teach.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit. So you were saying about solipsism, and you are the only consciousness that exists. Is this correct? And what we were going to say is that's a very lonely thought. A very lonely thought that says that you're alone, that you created yourself, and there's nothing else. But what that is a misunderstanding of what we teach, in that you are a mind and everything you experience is in your own mind. You see, nothing that seems to be out there is doing anything to you. It is always coming from your decision. Does this make sense?
Waiting for a response. Yes.
So that's where that makes sense, you see. But you are not alone. You are not alone at all. If you were alone, then you'd be lost. But you are not lost, you see. So, and then as far as some similarities between what we teach and solipsism, the only thing that we have to say is that, yes, it's up to your mind, up to you to make a decision. You see, no one can do it for you. So you are the only mind that can make up your mind. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful. And
so is there truth to solipsism, or is it simply a distortion of truth? Are other people conscious? You
yes,
answered
indeed.
that. And do my acts of love really matter to them as well?
It matters because all minds are joined, you see. All minds are joined. So why not love, you see? Why not express love? In fact, that's what you're being asked to do, you see. Not coming in and expressing hatred and blame and darkness, you see. But you are to choose to be a beacon of light, which means you choose to be one who operates from a mind of peace rather than a mind of conflict, you see. And that is extremely important, you see. Like we were saying before, your responsibility is not what you see happening around you, but how you react to what is seen. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful. And don't get hung up on things like analyzing solipsism or analyzing anything. You see, remember this. Analyzing is of the ego. Acceptance is of the Holy Spirit. And what you want to do is move into a place of acceptance. You see, that's surrender. Does this make sense? Because you can feel the fight in the analysis, can you not?
Yes.
It's this conflict. I can't understand. I don't know what this is. I really want this to make sense. Whenever you feel like that, just know that that's the ego mind, you see. Because think about it like this. What would it feel like if I didn't have this thought at all? Who would I be if I let this go? And what we want to tell you is that if you let it go, you're free. You see, does this make sense?
Yes, it does. Are animals conscious?
Yes.
And is there such a thing as the form world, such as an Egyptian pyramid, if I'm not there to see it?
Well, here's another thing. Does it bring you peace to know if in a part of an illusion is there, if you're there, and whatever? Does this make sense?
Yeah, thank you. I love you. Thank you so much.
We love you too. See, what you want is peace. Because again, you can feel the fight in the mind of trying to figure out, does that exist if I'm not there to see it? What does it matter? You see, what does it matter? You want to wake up from the dream of duality, you see, not stick around in it. To stick around it is to make something like finding out if something's there, if you're not there, real to you, you see. Freedom. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next question here is, my boyfriend and I broke up 6 months ago, and I'm having a really hard time letting go. It's a lifetime pattern that started with my father. Being an ACIM student, I rationally know a lot, but however hard I seem to try, I haven't been able to let go, and I feel trapped and often in anguish. My ego mind does not want to let go, but yet my spirit mind does want to let go. What do I do?
Okay. First of all, your spirit mind has already let it go. In fact, the moment that it happened, it let it go. Does this make sense? And the other part we were going to say about this is you're thinking too much about it, you see. And again, the analysis. Do you see what we mean?
Yes.
Because it's already done, it's already gone, so you can move on. There's nothing there to analyze, you see. There's nothing to think about with that, you see. So you want to hand all your thoughts about it to the Holy Spirit and ask, how, Holy Spirit, do you perceive this? Show me the way, and I will follow. Does this make sense?
I see. Do I continue to ask Spirit for help until a perception shift happens, or is there something else I should do?
Well, here's the thing. Don't get so hung up on, I've got to wait until I have a perception shift. Just go with the flow, and then it happens naturally. And you may not even notice that you've had it until a little bit down the road, and you say, wow, I did have a perception shift, you see. But what's happening is you're getting caught up in the story, you see, because the ego says, okay, you've got it. You understand that, you've let it go. Wait, here's another block. And then you keep going, and then, oh, no, here's another block. Each time, just say, okay, there it is. It's time to release, time to let it go, you see, because there is nothing there. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful. So you really want to be free. But this situation is one that your ego finds works for it, in that it has you in the illusion of being trapped. Does this make sense? But you don't have to agree with that. You can just laugh and say, that's ridiculous. I am in no way trapped. I am free. I am healed. I am love. Does this make sense?
I get it.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Next question. I'm now going through a life transition that requires me to work 24/7. I only have a few minutes per day to remain still, and I've sensed a loss of peace compared to before. I'm doing my best to remain peaceful, but it's becoming harder with my increasing workload. Do you have any advice?
Yes, we do. So even though you are experiencing an increase in your workload, you do not have to lose peace. And you do not need a moment to still yourself in order to choose peace. Does this make sense? Obviously, if there is something, a conflict, you want to pause for that moment and then choose peace, you see. But we want you to start practicing, like what we were saying, to begin your day with peace as your guide, rather than thinking about the day and how you don't have the time and you're not getting that stillness. Does this make sense? But instead, you choose the stillness at every moment, no matter what has happening around you, you see. No matter what tasks you have to do with work or anything, you can always be at peace anyway. Does this make sense?
Waiting for a response.
So you can use this increase in workload to show yourself that you can choose peace no matter what, and that peace of mind is something chosen. Does this make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next question. To me, ACIM is mostly a book about words, beliefs, exercises, and ideas designed to catalyze spiritual growth and awakening. However, you speak to us directly during the weekly sessions. What role does the direct transmission of your spiritual energy to us have in this awakening process? Does it, for example, release karmic or energetic knots? And is there anything we need to do besides being receptive to the spiritual energy transmission? Thank you for your guidance.
You're welcome. So there's nothing you need to do except to be receptive to the energy, you see. And what happens is that in this energy, you raise up energetically. And because there are many, you all raise up as one. And there's a strength in that, you see. And we were saying how having that experience strengthens the spiritual nature of you. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful. And so when you are in these sessions, you have this experience through osmosis. So it naturally you entrain to the high level energy, you see, because it is one with you and it is part of who you really are. You see, it's not separate from you. It's an acknowledgement of who you really are. Does this make sense?
Yes.
And another thing we were going to say is ACIM, A Course in Miracles, is opening to love, you see, to truth, which is love, you see. Forgiveness. Does this make sense? And yes, it has words, but it has words because that is the way that you communicate, you see. Remember, in A Course in Miracles, we say, we speak to you in a language that you can understand. Words are that language, you see. So, anything else?
Sure. Sure, I understand. Nothing else.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. Jesus, I want to channel you. I've been working the ACIM lessons and learning to meditate. How can I reach you? How can I hear you and know you are there?
So, first of all, we cannot teach you how to channel. but we can teach you the steps toward greater awareness of our presence, which is really the question you're asking. So remember how you are learning to meditate. The point of meditation is to still your mind so that you can open your mind to higher awareness. Does this make sense? And with the higher awareness, you begin to have conversations or experience higher energies. Does this make sense?
Waiting for response.
What we also want to say is that in meditation, you really want to let go of all thought, but anything that does arise, you want to take that to the light. So we're saying this, such as any thoughts that are negative or dark in any way, you want to take those thoughts to the light so that they can be corrected. And the more that you do that, the more you open yourself to hearing the voice for God. Does this make sense?
Yes.
That means letting go of all of your own opinions, your own thoughts about what's right and what's wrong. And remembering that everything is either an expression of love or a call for love. You see? And so everything is very simple. And the more you go into that way of thinking, releasing your own thoughts, turning to the Holy Spirit, you will hear the voice for God. You will. It also requires devotion. That means that you choose to listen to higher guidance rather than letting the ego guide you. Does this make sense? And you can always tell if it's the ego if you feel as though things are not peaceful. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So keep practicing releasing your beliefs, you see, and say to yourself, I don't really know, but one who does is the Holy Spirit. And so I turn to the Holy Spirit to guide me, you see. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Next question. Please, could Jesus explain the difference between setting healthy boundaries and unhealthy boundaries? And in relation to the healthy boundaries, how can we do it without judgment? And what is the role of forgiveness when it seems we are clearly judging a situation when we set boundaries? Some deep insights would be wonderful.
Wonderful. So healthy boundaries. So you do need boundaries in the world of form, you see. Does this make sense to everyone? Healthy boundaries are just those logical boundaries that are necessary, such as you wouldn't run to a murderer and ask for help. Obviously, that's a boundary. You wouldn't do that. And the other thing is the kind of judgment that it takes to see if you need to put up a boundary, you want to look at more of as discernment, you see. So I discern that it isn't very safe or logical to run to a criminal for help, you see. So, but an unhealthy boundary comes from thinking with the ego. And we're going to say all of these things entail some sort of ego, you see, but what you want is to choose to do it from a mind of peace rather than a mind of conflict. So instead of feeling I have to set boundaries for myself because this is dangerous, you see, you want to go to your mind of peace where it is, I will not do this because it's because of logic, you see. And it's done out of peace rather than out of fear. Does this make sense?
Yeah, waiting for a response.
And if the questioner is not here, does this make sense to everyone else? Wonderful.
Nod your heads.
Or even say yes. So
Yes.
very
Thumbs
good.
are up.
Wonderful. So
Yes, everyone is saying yes.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. My 3-year-old granddaughter asked if we were going to die. I was surprised and answered her, not really, but it can look like it. One day we're really just going to be with Jesus and everyone. Is there a better answer I can give her?
Wonderful, yes. So you want to say to her, well, bodies die, but you are not a body. You are spirit. You see, spirit is eternal and has no death. You see, you are endless. You are free and you are light. So reassure her that although bodies die, the spirit is never gone. So even if someone or if body dies, that spirit is still with you. You are never alone. You have nothing to worry about. You are always safe in the heart and mind of God, where you truly exist. So. Does this answer your question?
Waiting for a response. Okay, well, we'll go on to the next question. What are the correct words we should speak when praying for light, love, peace, healing, and harmony between family members, and also extending the same for all people, so we may hear about and see miracles in our lives? I give thanks and am grateful for guidance from you and the Holy Spirit, always, and blessings be to your channel, Aaron, as well.
Wonderful. So what are the words? We can't tell you what the words are. What you are to do, though, is to tune into Spirit and ask Spirit to speak through you. Does this make sense? That's to get your ego out of the way and let the expression of love express through you without judging it. Does this make sense? It isn't important what the words are, but it is important with what mind you are doing it with. So obviously, if you are in a mind of conflict, the words and the energy that's going to come from you is going to be of conflict. Does this make sense?
Yes, that questioner is not here.
But it makes sense to everyone else. Very good. So you always want to tune in with yourself and put that first. Does this make sense? So that your mind is clear and that you have chosen the mind of peace rather than the mind of conflict. So.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. Is it true that life on Earth is an experiment? If so, please explain.
Well, if you think about it like this, You coming here was kind of an experiment. Does this make sense? Meaning you chose to come here to have the experience of not being one. Does this make sense?
Yes.
And so that's the experiment. But the greater experiment is to choose truth, you see, to choose peace over conflict, love over fear, in all that we teach, you see. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Is it true that we've lived in other forms other than humans? If so, please explain.
Yes. Remember, you are not form. You are not form at all. The body is illusion. Everything here is illusion. You are an infinite being. Of course, you've been in other forms. Of course, you've been in different dimensions and all of these things. The mind is infinite. Does this make sense?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. I'm sending you infinite love and appreciation.
And we send that back, and we are one in that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. What does it mean to sanctify the mind?
That's to purify the mind. That means to let go of your own beliefs, you see, your opinions, even your preferences, and say this has nothing to do with who I really am. Who I really am just simply is, and is love. That's sanctifying the mind. Does this make sense? That means opening the mind to being what it is. Does this make sense?
Waiting for a response.
So,
yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
So you want to look at the thoughts that come up that are not of peace, and you want to look at them in order to let them go. So it's a process of looking at your dark corners and not holding on to them. That's how you purify your mind, you see. And it's not always easy. And you want to do it with the Holy Spirit, not the ego. The ego will always hold on to it. Holy Spirit shows you the truth and you go beyond it, you see. Does this make sense?
Yes, thank you a lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Can you comment on remote viewing?
Why not? Remote viewing is a gift that some have in the illusion. You see, in truth, you don't need remote viewing because you see all. But here, when you think that you're in a body, sometimes there are those of you who have clear sight, the ability to see more than what you see in form. You see. And that's what that is. Being able to perceive more than what you see with your physical eyes. Does this make sense? And yes, it is used by some to work on some clandestine things and all of that kind of stuff, which we know that you're interested in that aspect of it, we're sure. But yes.
A gift for what thought? Oh, what though?
Well, you have to look at it with yourself, you see, with the Holy Spirit. If you have a gift such as this, you say, Holy Spirit, I turn this gift over to you. Please use it in order to help heal the mind, you see. But in the world of form, it is and can be used for other things, like we said, sometimes clandestine work, you see. So remember this. The ego has a purpose for things, and the Holy Spirit has a purpose for things. The ego's purpose for things is to continue the story of separation. Holy Spirit's purpose for things is to use it to heal the mind and show you that separation does not exist. So it's always with what mind you are using it with.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Thank you. So helpful. Great love.
Wonderful.
Appreciate it. All right. The next question. Dear Jesus, in our last chat, you said, I had the experience of realizing I never left home so that I can now share and be an example. Then you said, remember, no one is out there. What is the point if nothing is out there? Why not just share from the awareness of being, capital H, home? Are we sharing with other minds who also believe they are separated? Are we creating a new fifth dimensional world? You teach to live by way of the heart. Is the goal to get out of the way and allow the higher self to love through us while we still appear to be a body? Or are we to get out of the way by removing judgment and negativity so that we shine from within, which breaks apart the illusion? I love you and thank you.
We love you too. So when we told you about you experienced that you never left home, it was an experience to remind you that you never left home. And what you were to do is to tune into that experience of, I have not left home. I am still in the mind of God, which is love. And you let that expression express through you. You see, that means you choose peace over conflict. You choose love over fear. You don't blame, but you forgive. You share kindness rather than hatred and all of that, you see. And as far as there's no one out there because everything is in your mind, you see. That's really it. And what's the point of this? Forgiveness. What's it for? For you to accept the atonement. For you to share it with everyone. Because you are one in mind. Minds are joined. You want to love and extend love always. Does this answer your question?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. I love you.
We love you too, and you're welcome.
All right. So we have some online questions.
We're getting to the online questions now.
We're having technical difficulty right now. So, okay, here we go. How do we know when we're attached to the illusion versus just enjoying what appears for the time being? I feel as though I understand that accepting and letting go by forgiving and loving is the way out of the illusion. But on the way out, I seem to be enjoying what is along the way, even those things that would not ordinarily be considered pleasant. Would it be better if I felt indifference or even ignored the bypassing illusions, or does it not matter? Just trying to identify to that which I may still be attached.
So remember to lighten up about it, to go with the flow and don't judge yourself. See, what happens is you're judging yourself for enjoying. Does this make sense? Because no one is telling you not to enjoy life while you're here. Well, you seem to be here. You see, but what you want to do is just remember that this is still illusion and none of this can keep me here. Does this make sense? There is no difference between pain and pleasure in truth. You see?
Yes. Lighten up. Yes, that is always the answer.
It is always the answer.
Thank you.
We were going to also remind you that pain and pleasure come from one thought system, and that's the ego thought system, you see. So just awareness that that's the thought system that it comes from, and just love, you see.
Excellent. Wonderful reminder.
Wonderful.
I have another question. Can the ego make you sick if it's threatened by your awakening?
Well, we don't want to say that it can make you sick. You choose to let it make you sick, you see. It doesn't do anything to you in truth, but it is your own decision that gives you that experience. Does this make sense? What we're saying is,
Yes.
don't blame the ego, but don't blame anything. Look to the mind and choose again. Does this make sense? Because we want you to realize the ego doesn't really exist. It is simply a thought. And it's a thought that you made up. You see, it can't do anything. It's not a separate entity. It's your mind, you see. It's part of your mind, is what we mean. Part of your mind. And you can always choose the other part of your mind, which is love and peace.
Does it try to do things to keep you attached
Absolutely.
to the dream?
Absolutely. It has, like we said, it has a purpose. Its purpose is separation. It will give you anything that will convince you that separation is real. You see, it wants to convince you that separation is real and that the body is real and that you are a body. But what you want to do is notice it and give it a smile and a nod and say, okay, it's just the ego mind. And the thing that I'm going to do is just let it go. You see, don't judge it. Don't judge yourself, even if you have the experience full on. Let's say you come down with an illness. Don't judge yourself for the illness. Don't judge the illness, but just let it go. Just notice or just know what thought system it comes from and just let it go. You see, be kind to yourself.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, here's another question. Could you speak to us about the many we are always one with and how all of life channels love to us endlessly?
Well, it is beyond words. But the love that is ongoing is simply is. Does this make sense? It's not something you can wrap your head around. It's not something that you can even understand, but what you can do is let go and let God and allow it to dawn upon your mind. And it will dawn upon your mind in an experience, you see. Does this make sense? And we can't tell you about all of those that you are one with because it is infinite. Just know that you are one with God in truth and that God is love.
Yes, I just feel it when I open lovingly to spirit.
Exactly, because you have entered the stream of love. You see, you've chosen to move in the stream of love, so you feel that love, you see. And this is an example of what can happen when you choose the stream of love rather than the river of pain, you see, or the river of hate. There's a totally different vibration and energy to that than love, you see. And so it's very black and white. You're always choosing between the two. You can always tell by how you feel. What you want to do is turn more towards love. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And here, another question. I'm having a difficult time healing, releasing my guilt and sadness and worry about my teenage children and behaviors that I feel are addictions. Do you have any suggestions? The guilt and worry and sadness overwhelm me.
Okay, so remember this. This is difficult for many, that each experience is chosen by the one experiencing it. Does this make sense? And also know that life is eternal, you see. What you can do is to help guide by being an instrument of love, you see. That you don't judge and you don't say what to do and what not to do, but you simply love and you guide with love. Does this make sense?
Yes.
And listen to the one. Listen, you see.
So be the example.
Yes, be the example and be open to hearing what's actually being asked for. Does this make sense? That means the pain that you perceive in another, you can hear when you let go of your own judgments about it. You see? And you open to love and let love guide.
So no action?
Actions may come, but they will be inspired. Does this make sense? Like we were saying before about a previous question, it is about what mind you're doing it with. You can do it from a mind of judgment, which is going to always be about action. And it could be a punitive action or some kind of let me show you the way and tell you what to do kind of thing. Or you can do it with love and peace, and that would be a gentle guidance. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So actions may happen naturally when you are in the flow of love, you see, but you don't judge the actions. You simply allow the actions to be flowed through you, which is you would take the next steps that are logical. Does this make sense?
Yes, yes.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you. So next question. Can you describe daily life in the kingdom of heaven? I know time doesn't exist.
Well, yes, we were going to laugh with you about that. There's no daily life. It just is life. And it's nothing like here because we don't operate by time or space, you see. It simply is. Life just is. And that's real life. Real life is not here. Real life is not in form, but outside of form, you see. And it simply is love expressing eternally and constantly.
So I know time doesn't exist, but I want to practice imagining life there and what things we'll be doing daily. So what do we do? But
you don't do anything daily, you simply love. But what you can do is take time out of your day to be in meditation for a little bit. You see, you don't have to do anything long, but just let yourself tune into that holy instant, you see, and experience timelessness, you see. That means let all thoughts go of the world and just be in the present, you see, be in the now. Does this make sense? The ego says it wants to know what you are doing. Holy Spirit says you just are, and everything just is. Does this make sense?
waiting for a response.
Well, you can think about it at least. You know that love is love and only extends and only creates more love. What is love, you see? And rather than choosing form or choosing conflict, you instead choose peace. And the more that you practice a peaceful mind, the more you will experience that which is closer to true life. Does this make sense?
Yes, but it's hard to wrap my mind around.
Because you're not
this.
supposed to try to wrap your mind around it. See, that's the block, you see. Because it's saying, I have to understand this. That's the ego. The ego says you have to understand it. Holy Spirit simply accepts. Remember how we were saying, analysis is of the ego, acceptance is of the spirit. So to get out of your way, you just don't take it seriously. We can't say that enough. You are also very serious. In fact, that is how this world came to be. You took it seriously. And actually, we were going to finish up one other question that did ask about, was the cosmos created by me when I became sentient. And what we wanted to say about that is cosmos happened when you felt that you had separated, and the guilt was so intolerable that you began to project it out. So much so that you projected an entire world and an entire cosmos, you see. But don't feel guilty about it, but instead look to the atonement. Does this make sense?
Yes, it does.
Wonderful.
Can I have a next? Yes, thank you very much.
Beautiful.
So I have next question is, I have a strong feeling of missing home, not home in this world
Real
recently,
home.
but I don't know where home is. Very often my heart has strong feelings and it makes me cry. Do you know the reason for this?
Absolutely. And we'll share another story from the channel. When she was a child, she would always say, I want to go home. I miss home. I want to go home. And her mother couldn't figure out what home that is. She was at home. But really, the home that she was missing, the home that she was longing for, was home with a capital H, which is the one you're speaking of. The reason you're crying is because you know that it is there. You have not separated from it. It is with you. It is one with you. You see, trust, love. And that is it, you see. So don't judge yourself for tearing up. Home is calling, and you want to return there. But remember this, you are already there. You are already there. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So one last question.
One last question.
When someone is strongly in their ego, it doesn't seem that any action done on their behalf will be perceived as anything but an attack, even if the action was inspired. It's more of a comment.
So you're saying that if someone is in their ego, that someone would perceive your love as an attack? Is that what you're saying? Because we are going to say the ego always sees everything pretty much as an attack. So yes. Don't make a big deal out of it. Okay. And don't try to do something for someone if they're, what we mean by this is don't try to convince an ego that things are different than what the ego wants, you see. Does this make sense? Meaning, don't try to convince an ego of what is true. Does this make sense?
Yes.
But just be an example of truth, which has no words, you see. That's remaining as a mind of peace and just simply loving. Just love. You don't even have to say anything. So, does this answer your question?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think so.
Well, no so. Just accept it and just be the love that you are. And you wouldn't even let an ego bother you. You see, you want to get to that point where you're at such great peace that no matter what's happening around you, no matter how people are acting around you, you remain in a state of mind of peace, you see. And your actions are that of peace as well, you see. It just simply flows through you. So you want to be that which you truly are, you see. And that is the light and the love and the peace that this world is asking for. We love you and thank you for joining with us. We have appreciated these conversations immensely. We love you and we are always with you. We look forward to joining with you again, but we are always with you. Namaste.